Welcome to Us in My Life. Love you and cause I love you so much. Oh, 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 I just love you. I just like help. I just like help. I just like you too. I just like you.
That's Ariana. She's so cute, and she has this song that but it's just really cute. So we that's what we're here to do today is help. This is the Optimize My Life radio show brought to you by the Hope Collection, and today we have our help is Nutrition Matters with Beth Wyman, and Beth is a registered dietitian, and with so much experience and so much knowledge that she's willing to share with us. So I'm going to sit back, take notes, listen up, and just learn how to have a healthier lifestyle. So welcome, Beth.
Thank you. So I'm continuing what we were talking about 2 weeks ago today, where it's really questions that I typically hear. And I kind of collected a bunch that I've been hearing lately. And it's funny because I actually just had this conversation this morning with somebody. So I was like, oh, how fitting that I'm also going to talk about it on the podcast. I'm hoping to get through 3 different things today, talking about seed oil, ultra-processed foods, and then the concept that, like, there's poison in your food or that certain foods are poisoning your body, because I've been hearing that too. So we'll start with the first, with the seed oils. I feel like the viewpoints on fast kind of go through these cycles of like, oh, you should only eat animal fat, right? Which is super high saturated fat, not great for your heart. But we'll have that run for a little bit, and then we'll get into, oh, it should only be plant-based fats, and you should only be using oil instead of butter. And we'll run that cycle for a little bit, and it kind of, same thing happens with eggs. Eggs are amazing for you for a little bit, and then suddenly everybody thinks that they're terrible for you. We like a good story, right? And we like a good black and white, like, clear-cut thing. Americans are not good at the whole moderation aspect of, like, have something sometimes. It's somehow lost on us. So you end up with this, oh, never eat these foods again, or you need to eat this every single day. And it's like, well, almost nothing needs to be done that way. It's just, what I usually say is, like, if you have an allergy to it, yeah, don't ever touch it. Like, that's pretty much the end of that. Like, beyond that, there's usually a time and a place for whatever food you want. So seed oils, what are they? I figured let's take it back and look at what they are. It's oil, like, that you would use for cooking and things, or salad dressings or whatever, made from seeds, right? So typically it's not always, honestly, like, reading through this list, like, it's not always a seed like you would think of. So canola oil, corn oil, cottonseed oil, grapeseed, soybean, sunflower, safflower, and peanut oil all count, I guess, as a seed oil.
Okay.
So oils, especially like seed oils like this, tend to be really, really great for, like, sauteing or pan frying. Like, they have a higher smoke point, so they're a lot better for high heat cooking. And so they're also a really great choice for deep frying because it's a high heat cooking method. And so, well, I think that you should avoid deep fried foods. It's not because of the oil that it's being fried in. It's because it's a way to add in extra fat that you just don't need. And it's typically, you're not typically deep frying. I mean, there are like deep fried green beans, but like typically it's not a vegetable, right? Like typically it's not like a great food choice to begin with that's adding in like fiber and vitamins and minerals to your diet. So there's like a host of reasons to avoid it that have nothing to do with the oil it's being fried in, or I guess to limit it, right? The other piece that tends to come up if somebody really like digs into this trend of seed oils being bad is that they're high in what's called omega-6 fatty acids. So it's just a type of polyunsaturated fat, and unsaturated fats are going to be a little bit better for your heart health, and they can actually help with preventing or protecting you from heart disease. There is a good piece to omega-6 fatty acids. The issue becomes when you have too many, right? So just like anything else where it's like some is fine, too much is bad. Like carrots are fine. Too much, you're going to get a little bit of an orange tinge. So it's that moderation piece. I know, like, I've had people where, olive oil is good for you. And so suddenly they're using an entire tablespoon of olive oil on their salad. And I'm like, well, it is good for you, but that's a lot. Like, you do that and then you're done with, like, your fat intake for half the day. It adds up really quickly. So it's looking at how much you're having. Your body also looks at the ratio of how much omega-6 fatty acid you're getting as compared to omega-3 fatty acids. And omega-3 fatty acids are what you find in things like fatty fish is a really good example of that. So typically, right, the standard American diet, you're not getting in too much like seafood, fatty fish, flax seeds, chia seeds, things like that. So the ratio in your body of omega-6 to omega-3, if you're suddenly having all of this omega-6 but not balancing out with enough omega-3s, your balance is going to be off.
Okay.
So it's not, you can't write them off as being something terrible without looking at the bigger picture. They can be helpful in like being protective to your heart and helping to prevent heart disease and being part of a healthy diet when it's used in moderation, and then definitely when it's balanced out with omega-3 fatty acids. And this is where like fish oil supplements are sometimes recommended if somebody has certain variations of high cholesterol, because the omega-3 fatty acids can actually help to lower, very specifically, triglycerides, which is a combination of fat and sugar in your blood. So these are important to get in. They're part of that balance that you want to have with the omega-6 fatty acids, which are that's what people are looking at when they talk about like seed oils being bad, is it's throwing off that ratio of omega-6 to omega-3, and then also just the overindulgence, right? Like if you've just literally had too much. But it makes a good sensational story, right? to say these foods are bad, and it gets more clicks, and that's what everybody's after. Somebody on here when I was reading it said that sometimes the list of oils is referred to as the hateful eight, which I've never heard before today, but apparently that's like what some people reference them as because they think that they're toxic and should never be used. But it's more about what type of food you're choosing that has this, right? So like if you're eating French fries and potato chips that have seed oils on them, it's not the seed oil that's the problem. Like, your chip is not suddenly going to be better if it's cooked in olive oil, or if it's, which would really be horrible because the oil's going to burn because the smoke point's low. And then you're going to get like a burnt plastic flavored potato chip. Oh my gosh, that just sounds terrible. So it's about moderation is what it always comes down to for most things, and understanding why these people are saying that they're horrible, right? It's not enough, at least for me, to say like, oh, these are horrible for your health, because I'm looking at it, I'm like, it's an unsaturated fat, right? And the goal is typically to limit saturated fat intake because that's been linked to heart disease and poorer heart health. So not necessarily removing all of it, but limiting saturated fat and opting in for more of an unsaturated fat when making food choices, which would include seed oils. But this doesn't mean use more, I think, is the piece that typically gets lost. Like, just because this is going to be better than a saturated fat doesn't suddenly mean that you can pour it on everything. I remember when my dad was working on lowering his cholesterol, so he would make toast, and instead of slathering the whole thing in butter, he would just drizzle the whole thing in olive oil. And I'm like, okay, so you have taken out the food that has saturated fat and cholesterol. Yes. But now you're like drowning it in olive oil, which like it's still so hot. It's still a fat. Like, they're still equivalent when you're looking at just purely the macronutrient component. So I'm like, we've learned a part of a lesson here, but not a full lesson. We're like halfway there. So close. But it's what I don't see, and I could certainly be wrong, is I don't see seed oils being added to food to be able to market it as healthy, which is good. Again, because more is not better. Oh, I was trying to pull out my canola oil. My old bottle of canola oil used to have a little symbol on the front saying that it was a heart-healthy choice. This one doesn't. That's interesting. It must be a different brand or something. But some of them will have like a little heart. It's a heart with a check mark on it, indicating that it's like a heart-healthy choice. Yeah, this doesn't have it on there. I was just checking one of the other ones. My olive oil doesn't either have anything like that. Some brands will, some brands won't. This doesn't say anything. But interestingly, like, you can look at, when you look at a food label or the nutrition facts label on the back, they do have to list the saturated fat, but they don't have to list the unsaturated fat or the types of unsaturated fat. Some of them will, just because, but they're not required to. Saturated and I think trans fat was required. Yeah, it is. I'm just looking at this one because it doesn't have it, but it's got a little thing at the bottom. And so even like my olive oil has 2 grams of saturated fat, but in the total of 14 grams of fat for each tablespoon, it's only 2 grams. So the other 12 grams are going to be some type of unsaturated fat just by process of elimination. But there's no, it's just so much. That's a lot of fat. It depends on everybody, it depends on the diet, but that could be up to like a quarter of the fat that you need for a day. It obviously depends on each
your whole meal.
What?
I mean, but that wouldn't be your whole meal. That, you know, what.
Well, that's the thing, is if you're having this plus you're having, like, say you did like a salad and you did olive oil and vinegar on your salad and you used a whole tablespoon of olive oil, thinking it's good for you, right?
Right.
And then you also had like a 4-ounce piece of salmon. It's a nice fatty fish. It's full of omega-3s, which are good for you when you need them. But now, let's see how much fat is in I was going to say a slice of salmon, a piece of salmon. Food Data Central has way more information than really anybody probably needs about any of their food. It breaks down, so like we talk about just like saturated and unsaturated, and then polyunsaturated and monounsaturated. This breaks it down into the different chain lengths of the fatty acids that are in the food. It's just not necessary for most conversations. Yeah. Yeah, it's way too deep. It's just not, we don't need that. That's not why we're here. Fish. Here.
Well, and sometimes, too, if you don't understand what, you know, the amount that you should have, it can be kind of daunting to over knowledge, but without a full understanding.
Yeah, exactly. And so this has another, it's actually only 4 grams of fat in like a 3-ounce piece of salmon. So it's not horrible, but to do, right? But it starts to add up. It's something that adds up really quickly. So if you did, say that was your lunch, right? And now we're at 18 grams of fat. We're really doing a little bit of a rabbit hole, but I don't mind it at all. And then say like you did eggs for breakfast, right? The whole egg, which I'm fine with eggs. I mean, in certain situations I'll limit them, but it really comes down to the individual cholesterol level, how it's responded to other things, like if we're looking to, and there's all kinds of stuff. But for one egg is 5 grams of fat. So say you've got 2 for breakfast, you've got there's 10, and then if you did, say you did a half tablespoon of oil on your toast, like a slice of toast with that on there, there's 17 for breakfast. So we don't think about it, but it adds up really quickly. And it's not that it's bad, it's just something to be mindful about and make sure that it's being balanced out with other stuff too, and that it's not making up the majority of your intake for the day. So like the breakfast example with eggs, toast, and olive oil, I would throw in like some fruit, right? Something where there's not added fat content or a vegetable, but you're getting in fiber and vitamins and minerals that you're not getting in the other foods you're eating. What was the lunch? The lunch was a salad with oil and vinegar and salmon. That meal definitely needs a high fiber grain to just round it out and make sure that you're getting in everything that your body needs for a full meal. And so learning like that moderation and how much you're having, and that it does add up pretty quickly, I think is important to know, just to be aware of what you're eating and what's going in your body, if you're truly meeting your own needs or not, because everybody's a little bit different. Because like I said, it kind of depends on other health conditions if I change egg intake, but as like part of just normal general recommendations, I'm good with eggs. They have lots of fat-soluble vitamins, which is, I mean, really excellent. And then I was looking to see, yeah, they have, can it give me the total unsaturated, or do I really have to do math? There's actually more unsaturated fat than saturated fat in the egg, it looks like. Oh, we can break it down into the types of amino acids.
Wow.
Things we just don't need. Yes. So I feel like I've gotten way off on seed oils. They can absolutely be part of a healthy diet. It's more about how much and what foods you're having them on. If a lot of times when people jump to like an all or nothing and then say like, well, it worked for me, like my health was so improved. I'm like, yes, but if you're cutting out seed oils, you're probably cutting out a lot of fried foods, a lot of like baked goods, things like that by cutting those out, you're cutting out those less nutrient dense foods, I guess, if you will. So yeah, of course your health improved. But let's look at really why. It has nothing to do with the seed oil, and it has to do with kind of what followed with that. So you can even kind of say like, oh yeah, it did make a difference to cut it out. It's like, did it, or did it make a difference because you cut out like stopping for a cookie on the way home, or yeah. So there's more that goes into it. All right, seed oils. I have that up for something else. The idea of ultra processed foods comes up a lot. Actually, came up a lot when I was looking up some information on seed oils, and I was looking for like a clear definition, right? Because we've heard like processed foods are really anything that's been taken and modified from its original form. And it's kind of misleading because if you think about it, like bread is a processed food, right? It doesn't look like wheat anymore.
Doesn't
at
grow
all.
on the tree.
You can't go out and pick it. You can't grow it in your garden. Typically, bread and cereal products are typically fortified with B vitamins, so it's also had extra stuff added into it that you wouldn't normally find in the original product, in wheat. So it's I don't know. It can be a little bit of a misleading term because like there's things that are processed that are not necessarily bad at all. So thinking about something like that, which then some people do take to the extreme and then just don't eat bread and opt for like potato or rice instead because it's less processed and looks more like the original product, which also isn't bad. Like you can certainly do that. You would want to make sure that, you're still getting in fiber from somewhere, because I know whole grain bread can really be a good fiber source for a lot of people. It's easily accessible. So you just want to make sure that you're like eating the skin of your potato to get in fiber that way, and things like that. So it can be offset. But there's no good consensus on what is an ultra-processed food, right? It's not, a lot of terms are actually regulated. So the FDA regulates a ton of different health claims that can go on packaging. They're working on some terminology around using the word healthy on packaging as well. So a lot of terms are actually regulated. So for me to go and look for a true definition, it's not kind of like, it's not arbitrary. It's because for most of these things, there are definitions. For something to be considered a good source of whatever, of fiber, of vitamin C, vitamin A, whatever it might be, it has to contain, I believe it's at least 20% of your daily value.
Oh.
Yeah, so there are regulations when it comes to these things, like for them to be able to be labeled a certain way. I want to make sure I'm right, because now I'm like, is it 20%? Having a weird moment. It's not coming right up, so I'm not going to worry about it. So the FDA regulates all of that, actually. And it's to make sure that we're not getting it's really to protect the consumer, right, the person buying the food, that you're not getting marketed a product and then buying something completely different than what you think you're going to get. Yeah. Good source. No, now it's going to bother me. Well, because there's also high in, like to label something as like high in fiber versus like a good source of fiber, there's different requirements. It's all very, like, there's actually quite a bit of nuance to it, which I find fascinating. Yeah. So, but yeah, it's to protect us so that we know what we're truly buying. Yeah, it's 20% or more of the recommended daily value. Look at that. I shouldn't question myself.
You knew the answer.
I find food labeling fascinating because it's like this intersection of health education and marketing, right? The manufacturer just wants to market the product and get you to buy it. Like, they put a lot of thought into the font, the color, the pictures that are on there, the words that are on there, all of that. But then you also have like the regulatory end from the FDA of saying like, no, you can't say this is a good source of something. There's barely any in there. Like, it's not. It's trying to make sure that we the people know what we're actually buying and helping us to be truly informed. But then the missing link there is that the people don't know that that's even being done necessarily, like, and don't always know to look for it unless they're somehow educated on it. So I see that as like the missing link in this, I don't know, nutrition labeling journey, I guess.
Beth, this country.
Yes. Hi. How are you, country boy?
Yeah, you know I always got something to say, but I was just listening to you, and I got 2 pages worth of notes in here. I just want to compare some things later. The first thing, again, everybody's body chemistry is different, number one. Number two, I learned a long time ago, it doesn't take a big meal to get full. So, and now I'm in a whole new generation. I used to go to buffet-style dinners just to watch people eat and see what they get. And this one has a lot of carbs, and these got mashed potatoes, and these got rice, and this one has the salad, and then she's got broccoli, and she's got spinach leaf, and just the eating habits. I love it because I've already counted 10 times a day, Beth. You said moderation, moderation, moderation. And my question before I coast to a stop, I kind of got like 4 or 5 sister-in-laws now, and as we grow older and into the marriages, 20, 30 years, you know, you have to kind of watch what you're eating because you're jumping 2 dress sizes, et cetera, et cetera. But, Beth, how does one become more health conscious without turning into, lack of better terms, a human calculator? Because when I go and listen to my sisters, I'm like, I'm not eating with y'all. Y'all order, and then I'll be back to eat. Because, I had this today, and I had that for breakfast, and I can't have this steak, and I don't eat red meat no more. What is there, I don't know what I'm asking now. I'm kind of confused myself, but I'm going to stop. But what is a good way to not say no, to what you don't know. One more time. What is a good way to not say N-O to what you don't K-N-O-W? I'll stop right there, Beth, because that's a question.
The very most basic way to make food choices and know that you're on the right track to eating well is to use what's called the plate method. And this is really where, like, choosemyplate.gov comes from as well. So half of your plate as fruits and vegetables, about a quarter of it as a whole grain, and then about a quarter of it as your protein. And if you stay within that, you're pretty much on track. And then that's it. You're not worried about, like, you know, how many cups of something you've had, or like the grams of fiber, because if you're doing it that way, right, and filling it up with certain things, right, fruits and vegetables, whole grains, and then some protein, you're going to get in enough fiber from making those choices. You don't need like a fiber supplement or anything, because you're going to be getting everything, all the fiber you need from the fruits and veggies and the whole grain component of your plate. And then you're getting in enough protein from that little protein section of your plate. I mean, it would be ideal if it was a nice lean protein, or occasionally, a couple times a week, like a piece of fatty fish, things like that. But that's getting a little bit nuanced. At the end of the day, I just care that that's how much room on your plate is taken up by the protein. Like,
Beth, one more time, Beth. I just took a quarter. I drove my plate on my page here, and I just want to kind of separate it again. Could you go a little slower on what takes up the plate space one more time, please, ma'am?
Yeah, half of your plate will be fruits and vegetables, and then a quarter of your plate as your whole grain, whatever you want it to be, and then the last quarter of your plate will be your protein food.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I just wrote it too. I just drew my plate also.
It's a really quick way, and it's a method that you can use anywhere, right? You can go out to eat and try to set your plate up this way. You can be at a barbecue or a friend's house or something and work within whatever you've got and try your best to make the plate look like that. And then you're still eating a full plate of food. You're still full, right? But you're getting in both the macro and micronutrients that you need to truly run well, right? To have your body run at its best.
And Beth, you said something about plates, because we've been, our family was still, most of us are still living, thank God. But this will be the 38th year that we had people to come here into Georgia and eat with us. At my house, we got 3 deep freezers and 3 refrigerators in storage buildings, and then 1 in the house, or a refrigerator in the house. So it's always plenty food. But you said something about a plate, because I want to share this information, because I have a lot of people that really are health conscious that want to change. Y'all hear that word? Change their eating habit, but they really don't want to have to go through learning carbs and fibers and how many grams of this, and because they're not going to remember. That would frustrate them. But Beth, this information that you just gave me, I'm going to pay it forward. I'll kind of stop right there again, but it was real valuable, because your body is not my body. You don't walk 10 miles a day like I do. I've weighed the same for the last 42 years. My mama told me I was born this size. So my brain says I can eat anything that I want to eat as much as I want. But see, I said earlier, my last point was, it does not take a big meal to get full. Beth, one more time, one day when we was talking, I hope I don't get you off track, you was talking about how your body gives you signals if you like sweets, or at least I would add extra salt. Do you remember that little cliff note that you gave with Beth?
It was
when your body's craving something, you're out of balance when your body starts to tell you that you want cookies and a donut and sugar, or if it wants salt. Do you remember that one, Beth?
I know that we've talked about like cravings before, that sometimes it's just that you're looking for more energy, more calories. Occasionally it can be like a nutrient deficiency, but usually it's a sign that you need to eat more. And it's not that you need a donut, it's that you need like a meal.
Thank you.
I'm not sure if that's the time you're talking about, but that's usually what comes up when we talk about cravings.
Okay, I'm on mute again. I'm listening. I got my pen still handy.
Yeah. I'm not sure if that answered your question or not about the cravings, because sometimes it can indicate stuff, but a lot of times it comes down to, especially craving like sweets, it's quick energy. And so your body's looking for quick energy. Sometimes you're looking for comfort. So it's kind of important to discern why you're reaching for the food. And if you're looking for it for comfort, you have to do the uncomfortable work of finding a different way to find comfort and really like actually facing your emotions, and that's getting into like emotional eating and things like that. But
I think I said that too, Beth, not meaning to interrupt. I think I said that too because, again, I like to eat, but I eat real slow, so it takes me a minimum 30 minutes to eat anything. I don't care breakfast, lunch, or dinner. But when I sit back to watch people, like I said, when I go into restaurants, I like to see what people are next to me ordering. I like to see Ron and Linda has the lobster tails and the crab legs and all that stuff that I wish I could afford. But when you start to see people that eat mashed potatoes and macaroni and cheese, and they'll have 3 carbs, a pile of them, and a meat, but no greens and no fruit. That's why I was thinking carvings when certain people have certain eating habits, and we all know what we like, and you prefer salads. Linda, if I took Linda out and I didn't know what she had to go out to the ladies' room and she says, "Country boy, order for me," I would already know what types of things to order from Linda based on the conversation that I've had about her eating habits. Now, you would be a little bit more tricky, but I'm just thinking that certain people just, I don't want to use the word and get you all targeted again, crave certain foods. But again, after we get through eating certain foods, if you go to somebody's house and open up their cabinet, then you'll start to see that they eat the same type of stuff all the time. Last one, I introduced 118 products to the marketplace, and I know about packaging and eye appeal and certain colors that appeal to you. And my thing would say, Linda, excuse me, ma'am, excuse me, sir, would you come over here and let me give your taste buds a joyride? We have a new product. It's in the store, and if you don't try it for free, I know you're not going to try it when you have to pay for it. Come on over here. So a lot of people don't want to try new stuff. They don't want to switch. And I'll just kind of coast to a stop there, but it was just a thought that a lot of people have, excuse my French, bad eating habits, and you approach them and they want to do healthier, but their comment is, I've always been this way. I'll stop right there, Ben.
Yeah. So looking at getting back to like the ultra processed, there's not necessarily like a great consensus. There is a group, it's called the NOVA classification. Who did this? Researchers at the University of São Paulo, Brazil. I don't know if it's a fully fledged system or if it's just a proposed system, but the way that they proposed the definition of ultra processed foods and what they used in their proposed like grouping classification is foods that have sugar, oil, fat, and salt. It's the basis of any baked good. You just throw flour in there too. It's literally every baked good you've ever eaten. And it's and then food substances of no or rare culinary use. So this would be like a hydrogenated oil, modified starches, protein isolates, utilizing different industrial techniques. So they looked at how it's done as well. So if there's just more steps in preparing the food before it even goes to market, right? And then anything that's added to make the product more palatable than you would normally make, like if you made it at home. So this is adding additional flavors, colors, emulsifiers. So they took into account actually a lot of different components for categorizing ultra-processed foods, but that doesn't make it cut and dry. Like, you'd have to really look at everything and say, okay, what kind of process did this go through? How did it get here? Does this count as ultra-processed, or is this just, what's the step down? The step down is processed food. So this would be things like how I was talking about, like bread. These examples include cheese, canned vegetables, salted nuts, dried or canned fish, bread. Yep. Yeah. So like bread they would consider a processed food, like we talked about, but not ultra processed, according to this, right? There's not like federal like regulatory guidelines on it yet, but this is a really cool proposed system, the NOVA definition, just to give it at least something to go by. And so by this, actually, my favorite high-fiber wraps would be considered an ultra-processed food. It's a standard flour tortilla, but then they've added additional fiber to it. So this is now an ultra-processed food because it's not something that you would normally use in a culinary setting being put into the product. So I don't know. There's so much gray area, which is, like I've been saying this whole time today, is not where we thrive at all for some reason. But it's really, I feel like it's the new wave of labeling junk food, right? Instead of calling it junk food, now we're calling it ultra-processed food. But truly, it's going to be the same things that fall into that category. And they're foods that really should be something that maybe you eat occasionally, but aren't having a huge value add to your life, well, to your diet. I shouldn't say life, because like if it brings you joy, then it's got a value add. But like what comes to mind for me when I think of ultra processed food are like cheese puffs, or as my daughter calls them, fat Cheetos. I don't know. She calls them fat Cheetos. But it's colored flavored air, right? Like there's nothing really to it. So it's, it's not, it doesn't wow me. It doesn't drive anything home. It's not something that I tell people that they should have with any regularity. And typically when I talk about those kinds of foods, it's really like, okay, well, why are you eating it? Like if you're actually hungry, that's not going to cut it. Like that's not enough. Right. If you're actually hungry, let's pick something that's going to actually feed you. So it'll be interesting to see where the ultra-processed food conversation goes, because typically this is paired with like a movement towards making your own food at home, right, and cooking, and that takes time. And that's, time is a luxury, right? Not everybody has time to cook. And so reframing some things, like I was actually thinking about this the other week because I got pre-sliced and washed mushrooms because I knew I was going to do sauteed mushrooms and onions, and I just needed to cut down on a step, right? Like, I paid for the convenience of them being already cut up. And I know around here, a lot of the grocery stores, you can buy fresh, pre-cut like vegetable packages to saute. Like it's usually like peppers and onions, and sometimes there's like zucchini and stuff in there too, but you can just, it's already cut, it's already washed, cut, you just throw it in the pan with whatever seed oil you want.
Right.
And away you go. So it's processed in a way. Where would that fall in their classification? Because it's already pre-cut. I think that they would call it a minimally processed food. And it's going to make it that much easier for you to make your own food versus like stopping and getting a burger and fries on the way home. So there's that learning piece, right? Like you can say like, oh, ultra processed foods or junk food is not a great choice. And it's like, cool. What do I use instead? Well, you should use your own, cut up your own vegetables and fruits and use those as a snack. And it's like, well, I don't have time. So how do I do that? And it's like, all right, well, buy a veggie. or grow your own. Cool. Guess what I'm not doing?
But sometimes it just doesn't fit your life.
Yeah, I would love to. I actually greatly enjoy gardening, and growing food does not fit with my life right now. Also, where I am, I could figure out how to keep the rabbits out, but not the squirrels. And so I gave up, and I'm like, it is not worth my effort right now. I will go buy tomatoes at the store. And isn't that wonderful that we have that available? If you think that there are different options to meet people where they are. If you can grow it, that's awesome. Like, very cool. I'm glad that you have the space to grow it, because some people don't have the space, as well as the time, energy, and knowledge. I have the time, energy, and knowledge to go buy it at the store. I guess time and energy. The knowledge is there. I don't have the time or energy. But it's sort of rethinking, like, okay, sure, I want to eat maybe less processed things. What's realistic, right? Like, so buy a vegetable tray. Does it cost extra? Absolutely. But then you don't have like 2 rotting heads of broccoli in the bottom of your fridge because you never got around to chopping them up. Like, so then, the $3 that you saved, you just threw out anyway.
Right.
Yeah. And that's definitely like one of those things that if you have the ability to, it's a pretty simple switch to kind of flip over and buy pre-cut things. Like sometimes I'll get pre-cut celery because I forget, honestly, to take it out and cut it up, and I don't like to eat celery, but my kids do, and so this way they can go in the fridge and get it themselves. It's already cut up. So it increases their vegetable intake to get it that way.
And Beth,
yeah.
Flip the coin on, beg your pardon, please, and see from a different perspective, people, even like me, I'm a single man, and there's not a whole bunch of kids running around in the house, but since I'm one of those people that do like to cook, that can buy local grocery, local grown stuff from the farm, and then we have one of the largest farmers market in Georgia. So it's easy to go buy, discount, those kind of things. But my point was, when I cook stuff like broccoli or green beans or what have you, I cook enough like I'm cooking for 6 people. But I put it in Ziplocs, and I get my Sharpie out and put what date I cooked it. So at any given time, instead of me doing a McDonald's run, I can run to my freezer and grab broccoli, grab yellow rice, I can grab pizza, I can grab a lot of different things, but the food never wastes because I do cook it, but I do freeze it, and instead of buying TV dinners, it's a country boy dinner. I'll stop right there, Beth.
Yeah. Yeah, you make your own frozen meals, which is excellent. And it's a really good way to go about doing it and basically create your own convenience food, right? So it's also so important when we're looking at processed foods and things to remember that some of this processing exists for a reason, right? So we're so used to now being able to buy fresh produce any season, right? But historically speaking, and especially people are starting to look to buy more food locally, things go out of season. And that's where canning comes in, right? And so you're processing the food, and that's literally what my mom does, a lot of canning, and she calls it processing. And so it's the full process, right, of cutting up whatever the food is. If it needs to be blanched, so like dipping it in boiling water and pulling it back out, like it gets blanched, then it goes in the can or the jar, right? And then it's like, what does it need to be in the jar? Does it need to be in a juice or a brine or just water, whatever it is? And then it has to be dunked in the bath, is what I call it. But it's put in like a hot water bath on the stove, and it has to like steal, which is preserved, right? So at that point, it's considered a processed food, even though it's been processed at home from a fresh item, right? Any of your canned, like if we use like canned vegetables for this example, like they all came from a fresh vegetable at one point, but then they were processed to be able to be stored and shipped. And right, freezing is another method of preserving food, but freezing takes up more space because you need to have a freezer, and it takes up more electricity and more energy. So canning can be a lower cost way of preserving the food, and it lasts a long time. And you can adjust like what you use to can, right? So like instead of doing a heavy syrup, do juice. And this would be the same thing that you look for when you're buying canned food. You'd go, instead of getting a fruit in heavy syrup, you'd get it canned in juice. Or when you're looking at vegetables, you'd look for ones with no added salt. But even salt, remember, is historically used as a preservative and a preserving method.
Yep.
What was that?
No, I was just agreeing because,
yeah.
I mean, we've come a long way that we can have frozen food instead of having to use as the main preservative.
Yeah. So it's not that the processed and canned food is bad, right? Like you have to keep in mind that it's there for a reason and it serves a purpose, and it can be super helpful for quick, easy meals too. Like I have every intention of using canned beans because all I want today are baked beans. I think because it's cold. So I'm going to grab some canned beans and make some baked beans later. Yeah, I think it's chilly over here today. I have on a sweatshirt and slippers, and all I want is like warm food. But then we can circle back. Is that eating for comfort? Like if I was just eating the baked beans to eat them, yes. But if I make them and make it part of dinner, I'm satisfying that like need for something warm and cozy, but incorporating it into my meal instead of having it as extra. So there's room for just about everything. Yeah.
We talked about space and not having a whole lot of space. Everybody don't have 3 refrigerators and 3 deep freezers. But my sister also bought a dehumidifier that actually just sucks the moisture out of foods, takes up a lot of space, takes up a lot less space. We can store it on shelves. We got those little things, the little racks like you slide stuff off when you're buying candies and stuff. They punch the hole in the bag. That's the way we have a lot of things like dried beets and several different types of dried peppers. We just did okra this year for the first time. We got certain things that we do dry. I beg your pardon?
Dried okra?
Yes. I have okra 5 different ways. Some just Cajun spiced, in a jar, smaller jars now. I don't do so many quart jars. I do pint jars and half-pint jars now, so it can stay fresh a longer time. And, just me, but when I have guests over and I wanted to open up, if you said, okra, and I go to my little storage room and bring out 3 to 5 jars. This one will say it's got chives and honey in it. This one is Cajun style, and for people that like a little spice in there, it's got okra and little dry red pods of chili peppers in there. So there's a lot of different things. And, again, I mixed the okra with the beets, and I got beets in there, and it has 2 little green round tomatoes in there. So, again, if you don't have a lot of space and people do really want to eat healthy, I noticed that you said, Beth, sometimes you had to learn how to go ahead and go to the grocery store versus growing the tomatoes for the squirrels to eat. Definitely can relate there. But, again, with shopping locally, again, is a big thing for a lot of people. If you do not have a lot of freezer space, look from the dried areas that you can actually get these nutritious food and add them to the foods. Even now, I can add some of the things to these canned green beans that's been sitting in the grocery store for a year, soaked in water, but by the time I sprinkle it with some of these nutritious powders that have other herbs in it, you know how you buy the herb blend? I have herb blends. So if I wanted to go get the fishing line string and jack some of the peppers down, then you can add those to a lot of things too. But when you said space, I know sometimes we come to this end of the year, this time of end of the season, people are going to be feeding a lot of people. They have a lot of guests, and those kind of things are going to be real helpful and handy because when they tell you that the hurricane is coming or the storm is coming, everybody runs out and buys up all this extra water and extra tissue and all extra stuff. If you did that, and again, from a different perspective in moderation, it wouldn't be such a crisis when a crisis does come.
You're staying prepared, right? And so, drying is definitely another preservation method that works. And I was trying to see if they've got dried food in here as any of their examples of the different levels of processed food. I think that would probably go in with no, I don't know. Maybe that's considered like a processed culinary ingredient. I don't know. That's interesting because I don't necessarily see it on here. Because they have fresh and frozen is considered like minimally processed. I wonder if dried would be considered minimally processed.
Yeah, we got dried green tomatoes. I don't know if anybody's ever heard of crab apples. It's the most bitter. I got 2 crab apple trees here. So there's certain things that I'm doing some fruit blends that I know that I got 6 black walnut trees, and if I put dried apples, dried pears, and dried grapes into a packet with something, then again, it creates something new. And again, everything doesn't appeal to everybody, and when you know what you like, Linda knows what she likes, and when she likes something, they said, and this is my last one, if you want to live longer, do more things, Linda, and travel, that you love to do, and eat more of those healthier foods that you really love. Again, in moderation. Too much of anything good is not good for you. But when they told you that you couldn't have cake when you went on a diet, they didn't mean that you couldn't have cake. Just don't eat the whole thing. Back to you, Beth.
Yeah, definitely. Moderation is huge, and that's really what it comes down to for both of these things, for like the processed, ultra-processed, whatever, junk food, whatever we want to call it right now, and the same thing with seed oils. It all comes down to how much and how often you're having it. And if you're overindulging, thinking something's healthy, that's not, you've kind of negated the health aspects of it and kind of swung in the other direction for pretty much anything. We didn't get to talk about that last piece where I'm hearing some people think that certain foods are like poison to their system, but I'm sure it'll come up again as we go through because I don't know. It's there is not poison in your food. If it was, it would be recalled. It's quite simple is the answer to that one. So I guess I can cover it in 30 seconds or less. Yes, it's not poisoned. If it was, it would be recalled, and it would be all over the news. So it's not being, secretly done or anything like that. So there's a lot of regulatory requirements that go into food and food processing, and it's, they're there for a reason. Definitely. I know we're probably in like our final seconds. So I'm most active on Instagram. My handle is at Beth Wyman _RD, as in registered dietitian. And then people can also get me in the Optimize My Life Facebook group. There is a specific chat channel for this show. If anybody has questions, topic ideas, things you want to hear about, I'm always open to those.
Well, thank you. And thanks for joining us. Bob, is that you that had somebody else with 706 area code had jumped out?
That's my area code, and that's probably one of my friends.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
wonderful.
good.
Well, welcome.
Well, I'm glad they joined.
Good. Well, we're on next Wednesday also, but just remember Monday through Friday, noon to 1 Eastern Time. We have a show every day on the same channel. But we're out of time, so I'll let you all go and have a wonderful, wonderful day. Thank you so much, Beth. We learned a lot.
Thanks. Have a great day, guys.
Thank you,
Bye.
Thank you, Beth.
Bye-bye.